I would like to say hello and thank you to Amanda Paradine for joining us today. She is a career coach with 20 years experience in HR, and she has kindly agreed to join us today to give us some advice on how we could take back some control in this current difficult times that we find ourselves in. Amanda will touch upon how we can take action, identify some of our key strengths, and identify to us some of the key industries that are thriving at the moment, and how we can constructively job search and find a job that kind of balances with our capabilities and also meets with our requirements in terms of our family life. So whilst we're waiting for them to join, Amanda, do you want to give us some background in relation to your career to date? And
yeah, thank you. Thanks. I'm really pleased that you've invited me here today. It's a pleasure to be involved in this. I think it's a really great initiative. So hopefully this will be useful today. But just to give you a little bit of background about me, as Imi said, my background is in human resources. So I had a career that spanned over 20 years. I specialised in recruitment for a lot of that time. But about 4 years ago, I wanted to change the balance of my life a bit. I was working full time. I was a single mum at the time as well. And I just wanted a slightly different work-life balance, to feel less stressed and to really do a job where I was using my natural strengths and skills and actually enjoying what I was doing. There were parts of my career I'd loved, but parts of my job that I absolutely hated and really didn't sit well with me, felt really uncomfortable. So I decided to set up on the side while I was working a career coaching business, so helping people who were feeling a bit stuck for whatever reason, or had been made redundant, or were looking for a new job, help them to find something that was going to suit them, even if they had absolutely no idea what that thing was. So I find I work with people now who are perhaps wanting a career change, maybe have had a really successful career up to date, but are now thinking, I'd like to do something else, but I'm just not sure what. I work with people who've been made redundant and help them rebuild confidence, self-esteem, and also help people to see that as a bit of an opportunity to maybe look at doing something slightly different. That maybe, you know, we've all heard it, haven't we, how redundancy was maybe the best thing that ever happened to me, and I'd have never have done X, Y, or Z had that not happened. So a lot of my work is actually helping build people's confidence, their self-belief, helping them realise what they're capable of, and as well as being a career coach, I'm an NLP practitioner, which for those of you that may not have come across that, it's neuro-linguistic programming, which is all about how we communicate both with ourselves and others, and how we can actually really change our experience of life and how we see experiences, things that happen to us, by the way we talk to ourselves and the way we talk to other people as well. So I incorporate NLP techniques into my work. So I like to be quite holistic when I'm working with people, and career and job is one aspect of someone's life, obviously, but it touches on so many other areas. If you're not happy at work, or if you're feeling anxious, or you've been made redundant, we all know it spills out into other areas of life as well. So I'm very aware of that when working with people. So today, as Imi said, we're going to be talking a little bit about how to identify what is going to make you happy, and how you can put in place an action plan, whether you're changing work now, you're looking for a job now, whether you're redundant or furloughed, whatever your situation, whatever your reasons for joining today or watching this on replay, then hopefully there'll be something here that you can take away and put into practice.
And just before Amanda gives her advice and expert tips, please feel free to ask any questions using the Q&A tab at the bottom, and I'll be happy to answer them as she goes along.
Great, okay, thank you.
So Amanda, how do we take control at the moment, and how do we manage our feelings in this really challenging time? A lot of the people that will be attending today may have been furloughed. Some will have transitioned to home working overnight. Others may have been made redundant or facing dismissal from work, and all the permutations that come with that. And then at the end of that, trying to find a job at this time.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it is. Unprecedented is a word we're using a lot at the moment, but let's talk about that. If you, those of you that are watching now, if you feel free to pop into the chat kind of what your situation is, whether you're on furlough or if you're looking for something right now, or you've been made redundant, feel free to share your situation, as then I can kind of help target my advice for you. But if you're feeling at the moment anxious or stressed or worried, maybe, if you transition to working from home overnight, maybe you're actually feeling a bit bored at home. Maybe you're feeling a bit frustrated. Maybe it's making you think about, actually, what do I really want to do? So maybe you're in a situation where your role is pretty safe, but actually this time is giving you some time to reflect on what you might really want to do. But if you are in that space of feeling very anxious, feeling very worried, feeling very stressed, I'm sure lots of you will have heard of the fight or flight response, the stress response that our bodies have when we're faced with something that we perceive as a threat. And not having enough money, not being able to pay the bills potentially is a massive threat, and quite rightly our body responds accordingly, and we can panic, we could freeze, we could the cortisol levels start to rise, so then it physically starts to affect us as well. But making decisions from that place of panic is not a great idea. And I know the first response often when someone hears they've been made redundant, your job is at risk, or they feel that their job is at risk, is to go into panic mode and to just panic. And actually the best thing to do is just to press pause for a moment, to pause and just give yourself some time just to naturally calm down. So if you do feel yourself really starting to get very anxious and panicking, then a top tip from me is to practice just a mindful minute. So that's literally for 1 minute. If you're feeling really anxious, you're feeling very stressed, just to have 1 minute where you're focusing solely in on your breathing. And you could time yourself on your phone or on your watch, and just focus in on the in-breath and the out-breath, just to calm yourself right down in that moment. And the other thing I would say is, if you are feeling like that, is to be kind to yourself. Do you know what? It's okay to lie on the sofa and eat a packet of biscuits and binge on Netflix if that's what you feel you need. But you don't want to get stuck there. You don't want to end up wallowing long term, because it's much more difficult to come back from that. So what I would say is, recognize how you're feeling, allow yourself to feel how you're feeling, whether that's anxious, worried, stressed, and then be kind to yourself. So say to yourself, it's okay that I feel like this. Your feelings are absolutely valid. It's a scary time. It's okay that I'm feeling like this. Give yourself what you need, but also know what makes you feel good. So if you are a runner, if you know that getting out in a run, especially with this beautiful weather that we've got at the moment, if that's something that makes you feel good, go and do it. If getting lost in a really great book is something that makes you feel good, do that. So be aware of what you personally need, both physically and emotionally. So if you are in that space of anxiousness, worried, stress, are you getting enough sleep? Are you drinking enough water? Are you eating the right things? So all of those very basic things that we know we need are even more important when we are in that space of feeling stressed or anxious. So if you can not make any major decisions when you're feeling like that, that's probably a good idea, because we don't make decisions well when we're in that panic, fight or flight response. And then practice a bit of self-care, look after yourself, be kind to yourself, and then start thinking about ways in which you could start to take some control, feel better, feel calmer, and maybe not feel like you're being swept along on a tide, that actually you can start taking control of the reins. Whatever happens, you're in control of you and what you decide to do next. Although it doesn't always feel like that, we've always got some control, we've always got options, albeit they might not be options we like, all of them, but we always have options, and we're always in control. So you may be at the moment redundant, looking for work. You may be looking for exactly the same type of job in a different industry. Maybe the industry that you're currently in is an industry that's been heavily hit by the coronavirus, and maybe you're needing to start thinking about how you could transfer your skills into something that's maybe a bit different, and we'll talk about that a bit more as we go along. Maybe you are actually thinking about making some kind of a change. So whichever space you're in, whether you're looking for something the same but in a different company, you're looking for something slightly different, or you're looking to make a complete change, a really great place to start and to start taking control is to carry out a skills audit of yourself. So to identify those skills that you've got, the things that you do naturally really well, because once you've got that on paper, it becomes much easier to see how many transferable skills you've actually got. Because the number of people I chat to who don't believe the skills they've got are going to transfer anywhere other than what they've always done. So a classic example, last night I was chatting to a lady who worked in retail, who wants to move into something else, and I asked her what she felt her top 3 skills were, and she said, well, it's retail. But actually you dig under the surface of retail and you'll find someone who's got great communication skills, who can deal with the public, who can problem solve, who's calm under pressure. So it's about digging down under those kind of top level skills to what is at the core of what makes you and actually what you enjoy doing as well, because sometimes we can be great at things that we don't actually enjoy very much. So a really simple skills audit. Take 2 pieces of paper. On one piece of paper, write down the skills that you've got that you love to use. So that could be things like organising or solving problems or writing, planning, researching, whatever it might be. You know, don't think too much about it when you're doing this. Just see what comes out kind of on as you're writing them. So paper 1, skills that you actually love using. On the second piece of paper, write the skills that you've got that maybe you don't enjoy quite as much, but you actually know you're pretty good at them. So maybe using Excel, or maybe proofreading or presenting. So maybe you don't enjoy that as much, but you know you can do it if you have to. And make sure you're including skills from all areas of your life. So not just work, but think about much more widely, because there are often lots of things we do outside of work, or if we're not working or have had a break, that are absolutely valid. Skills don't only have to come from our jobs, they can come from any element of our life. And then you should have a nice couple of lists there. If you struggle, if you think I just don't know what I'm good at, go and ask some friends, go and ask some family what they think you do really well. And that in itself is a really nice confidence boost, actually, hearing what other people think you do well. But that's the top tips. If you find you're struggling thinking about what you're good at, then go and ask some of your friends or family what they think. And when you've got your 2 lists, just have a look back over them and then ask yourself what those skills say about you. So let's say you've got researching on your list of skills that you really enjoy. Now that's probably saying that actually you've got quite good attention to detail. If you've got writing on your list as a skill, maybe that's saying that actually you're pretty creative. So you've got a kind of a high level skill, but actually there are probably other skills underneath that as well. So just spend a little bit of time reflecting on those skills that you've got and what they say about you, and add those things to your lists as well. And then have a look at them and think about when those skills have actually made a difference. So when have you fixed something using your problem solving skills? And actually think of that specific example. When have you organised, if organising is one of your skills, when have you organised a great event or party? When have you won an award or got some really great feedback as a direct result of your skills? So think about how you've actually used your skills in practice. And then go over your skills and just put a star next to any of those skills that you use when you get into flow. And when you get into flow is when you're doing something, when time just disappears and you're kind of totally absorbed in that task or activity. And before you know it, you look up and 2 hours have gone by. So be really clear about what those skills are that get you into flow. So you might want to pick this up and kind of come back to it over the course of a few days as you think of new things to add, but it's really worth spending some time on this exercise, whether you know exactly what you're looking for in terms of your next job. This will be great for helping you to revamp your CV because you'll be really clear on what skills you've got that are going to transfer into the job that you're looking for. But if you're looking for something slightly different, or you're needing to think about how you can use your skills in a slightly different way, then again, this is a great springboard where you can then start to think, okay, look at all of these skills that I've got. You know, what kind of businesses are going to be looking for someone who has got great organising skills, problem solving skills, who's a great communicator? And actually, the answer will probably be quite a lot of industries. So you don't have to pigeonhole yourself, and just because you've always done one thing, it doesn't mean you can't transfer those skills into something else. And it may be as a result.
So if people at the moment who've lost their jobs may panic and just jump on the first jobs that they come across, but you don't think that's the right thing to do, we should just take a bit of stock, a bit of time to reflect, as you know, as much as we can, because everyone has pressures on economic pressures on them.
Absolutely.
A bit of time to evaluate where they are in life, what they really want, what competencies and capabilities that they have that lend themselves to, and then work out the job role. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think that process doesn't have to take very long. You could do it in, you know, an hour. If you wanted to, but I think it's well worth doing that. And there's always a danger, and I totally get that sometimes a job, you know, any job is the top priority. Whatever it is, I need to get some money in next month, and if that's the top priority, then that's absolutely the right thing to do. But there's no reason why you couldn't go through this process. You've secured that I need to pay my rent next month job, but actually I am going to have a little think about kind of what might be next for me, you know, and just spend a little bit of time reflecting on your skills and strengths. So, you know, the next job actually might be something that might be better suited for you.
Yeah. And that's part of being kind to yourself as well, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah.
But there's something called a rebound job as well. A bit like when you break up from someone, there's a danger that you can rebound into a relationship that might not be very good for you. There's rebound jobs as well. So you can kind of bounce from something into something else that actually isn't good for you. So you don't, and as I say, I totally get the pressure. You know, I've been there myself, and you know, sometimes it is all about getting the money in the door. But just be careful that you're not going to put yourself into a situation that really isn't going to be right for you, and that in a few weeks' time you're going to be looking for something else. So just spending a little bit of time beforehand, I think, is useful. So you're not making that decision from that place of panic, that you really are thinking, yes, this is the right thing for me right now, and I'll think about what's next maybe later.
What industries do you think are at the moment actively recruiting? Because it just seems, you know, everything's in lockdown and not open for business. So what are there jobs out there at the moment?
Yes, there are. And you know, that's one of the key things that I wanted to share today, that actually there are industries that are thriving as a result of the situation that we're in. So if you are unfortunately in an industry it's taken a big hit, that might take a long time to come back, then it's worth remembering that actually companies are recruiting at the moment, albeit in a slightly different way, and interviews taking place like we're chatting now. And I've got my thoughts about some of those industries, and I'll just share my screen if you're okay for me to do that.
Yes, please.
So we can...
Thank you.
Yeah. So can you see that? Yeah, okay. So these are some of my thoughts about some of the industries that are thriving. And I've thought about as well, which are kind of the short-term areas that are thriving because of the situation that we're in. And then some of the industries that are either, they're always going to be things that we need, that we want, or are actually going to be increasing in terms of staff and what's needed. So I could just run through those quickly, but I'm sure people can see those. So obviously anything online in terms of entertainment and retail has seen a big upsurge at the moment, but I think that it's fair to say that that's probably been a trend anyway for some time, and we've just seen a bit of a rapid increase in that. So who knows where that might go after, but I think that kind of space at the moment, it's going to be under pressure. There are going to be people needed in those areas. Dating apps, again, they're always something that's around, but I think with people in lockdown, they've seen a bit of a resurgence and more people signing up to them for now. Hobbies, so again, we're all stuck at home at the moment, so the hobby area is something that's kind of big at the moment. E-learning, again, a lot of companies, and particularly with perhaps companies thinking in the future about less people being in one space, so people being based more remotely, e-learning is likely to be something that's going to be increasing. Cleaning, that's my spelling area there, cleaning produces, cleaning products. So we've all been cleaning our homes, so that's seen a bit of a boost as well, a bit of a trend, as has home fitness, because we can't go out and go to our gyms. And then the increasing trends there, so around software, so internet security, workplace technology, and alcohol and beauty, which never goes away. We always want a glass of wine and a lipstick. So,
and a haircut if we can, but that's
not... a haircut. Yeah, so there are industries at the moment that are thriving, that are selling more than they ever have done, that will be looking for people, albeit remotely, to do work for them.
And so how do we go about searching for these jobs? Oh, excellent, so you're on there.
Yeah, so as well, thinking about some of the areas that are going to be important to employers at the moment, so supporting their staff remotely, their well-being, as you're putting these seminars on for people as well. Employers need to think more about how they can support their staff. So there's going to be work now for people to get involved in supporting other companies' staff. Revenue generating support for businesses who are trying to increase their revenue. So if you have some social media skills, some digital marketing skills, they're likely to be in demand at the moment. And obviously remote and online working, so employers are going to be looking probably to do more online and remote working in the future, given that they've invested a fair bit in terms of kit and technology for people to be able to work from home. So there are areas there that are growing, but there's a need now. So if you have some skills where you think you could add some value in some of these areas, then I think there are opportunities out there. So let's talk about how you find them. These as well are just some of the kind of trends that I think are going to be over the next few months, particularly. We've kind of talked about some of them, but hopefully it will give people some more ideas as well. If they've got particular expertise in, say, health and safety or hygiene, that's going to be big, big news for employers as people start coming back to the workplace, or they needed to make their workplaces safer. So hopefully there's some ideas there about how some things that if people have got skills in, and you could think outside the box a little bit, but if people have got skills in, there are opportunities out there. So how do you find them? And let me just stop sharing there. So how do you find them? So firstly, try and be clear on what you're actually looking for, which I know sounds pretty obvious. But if you have an idea about what you're actually looking for, then it's easier to find it, because saying I'll do anything, it actually then becomes quite hard to actually search for anything, because you know, what search criteria do you put into your jobs board? So try and be clear on what you want. So what are your priorities? How much money do you need to earn? Where do you want to work? Or maybe that's going to be remotely at the moment. But just try and have some clarity about what you're looking for, what skills you want to use. Have you identified an area that is a growth area that you think, okay, I want to go there? So do a little bit of research and think about what skills are they looking for? What have I already got? Do I perhaps need to do an online course in something at the moment just to help bolster my skills in a particular area? Do I know which area I want to get in, but I'm not really that experienced? Could I do a bit of volunteering for a charity or a business? That might be tricky at the moment, but it's actually a good way to gain some valuable experience, to know whether or not it's an area you want to go in, but also to add that to your CV, that you've actually got some tangible experience in that particular area.
And sometimes it's always a way to get a foot in the door as well, isn't it? They might not have an opportunity available, but if you offer yourself,
absolutely,
which you are, and then that sometimes overcomes that horrible barrier where you're coming from a different industry or sector, and people think, well, you've always committed yourself to retail or working in the airline industry. Why would we be interested in you in the health sector, for example?
Yeah.
You can show your level of commitment and your passion. And we all have times in our lives where, you know, we've committed to a given path, but change comes along, whether we willingly or unwillingly.
Yeah.
And we adopt a new direction in our life, and
absolutely
skills that lend themselves to that particular industry.
Yeah, definitely. And if you think about your CV, then if you are thinking about doing something different or needing to, have a section on your CV which is your skills, so your key skills on page 1. So rather than, well, why is this person who's always worked in retail, why are they applying for a healthcare job? The first thing that the recruiter sees when they pick up the CV is actually all of the skills that they've got that are transferable into the healthcare setting. So think about that when you are doing your CVs, and if you are looking for something slightly different, think about telling the recruiter that these are my skills, and not just a list of skills. So anybody could write a list of skills, but actually problem solving. I have to deal with difficult customers every day in my job as a retail supervisor. So kind of giving them a little bit of information about how you've developed that skill as well.
And would you recommend that instead of having one bog standard CV that people send out, they kind of tailor their CV to a particular job role that they're applying to?
Absolutely. And always tailor your CV to a job. So don't just send out a bog standard CV, really tweak it, look at what they're asking for and check on your CV. Have you ticked all of their boxes? Have you shown them that you've got the skills and the experience that they're looking for? And it might be that you might want to have 2 versions of your CV. Maybe you want one for the industry that you're in at the moment, and then one for something slightly different, which you would still tweak, but you might want to have 2 kind of master versions, if that makes sense.
And would you have a manual, or would you say, you know, keep it short and simple? I mean, how long is a good CV? Or
2 pages.
2 pages, no more than 2 pages.
No more than 2 pages, except in certain industries. So the IT industry is slightly different in that respect, particularly where there are a lot of contractors in that space, so who've worked on lots of different projects. So they tend to be slightly more lengthy and more technical. But in general, we say no more than 2 pages for your CV.
Is there anything else we could do to make ourselves look outstanding, like have a LinkedIn page or anything else?
Yes,
do you
yeah.
think?
So definitely, I think a lot of people focus their job search solely on jobs boards, like Indeed, which is probably the most famous one, which is fine, and that's absolutely a valid part of a job search strategy. But don't just rely on jobs boards. 60 to 80% of jobs are never advertised. They're not going to make their way onto the jobs board. So the way you find those jobs that aren't being advertised is to start expanding where you're looking. So yes, definitely get yourself a LinkedIn profile if you haven't got one, and populate it. And once you've amended your CV, maybe you could use that as a basis to populate your LinkedIn profile, and then start making connections on LinkedIn with people in the industries that you want to get into. In the company, you might have a list of companies, and I'd recommend it. Have a list of companies that you think I'd really like to work there, and then go and stalk them on LinkedIn. Go and find people to connect with that work at those companies, and then you've got direct access to them. Engage with people on LinkedIn. So let's say you really wanted to work for a particular company, you've connected with the recruiter who works there, make a comment on posts that she or he are putting out there. So you start to engage. So LinkedIn, it's a professional networking site, but it's also a social media site. So it is important to be social. So I'd say start increasing your connections on LinkedIn in the areas that you want to get into, and start engaging with people on LinkedIn as well. Twitter, somewhere else to go to. Again, if you've got some target companies, go and follow them on Twitter, and they often will advertise roles on Twitter as well.
And once you get to the stage that you're finally being invited in for an interview, what should you do? I mean, if, for example, you're living in London and you don't really want to travel on the, proviso you might or might not get this job, can you say in the current market, can I have the initial interview by video, or do you think that you should just make the extra effort?
I think most companies at the moment are still operating sort of strict social distance policies. So I've not heard of any face-to-face interviews happening at the moment. It's all been via Skype initially. I think maybe as things relax, maybe there will be the opportunity for more face-to-face interviews. But I think in general, what I've seen right now is that they're tending to be over Skype or Zoom. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't prepare as if it was a face-to-face interview, and don't turn up in your pajamas. Maybe on the bottom half your pajamas would be okay, but certainly not on the top.
So would you wear exactly what you'd wear to a normal interview, a formal attire?
Yeah, I would certainly on top wear a shirt or a blouse or something that is appropriate for the industry that I was being interviewed for. But I wouldn't wear my high heels to sit on a Skype interview. So be sensible.
But you can sit on a cushion just in case.
Sit on a cushion, yeah. And I think, just prepare as if it was a face-to-face interview. They're still interviewing you, but it's also an opportunity for you to ask some questions as well at an interview. So think about what you want to get from the interview as well, what questions you might like to ask about the business or the job itself too.
Questions come in. Is there a chance that temporary jobs might convert to permanent jobs after the pandemics?
Always, yeah. And that's always been the case, that sometimes a temporary job is a foot in the door. I took a 3-month contract once with a business, and I was there 3 years later. Because I'd got in the door, I'd proved myself, there was a continuing need for what I was doing, and the business expanded. So they offered me a permanent contract. So yeah, I'd say, if there's a temporary position that you think is right for you, then go for it. You never know what might happen.
Are there any common pitfalls that we should avoid?
Sorry, you dropped out there, so I didn't hear all of that. No.
Are there any common pitfalls that people should really avoid that happen, time in, time out at interview, when they get to the interview stage?
I think it's really obvious as a recruiter. It's really obvious when someone hasn't prepared, when they haven't. We all know some of the questions that we're going to be asked. What are your strengths? Why do you think you'd be good in this role? So prepare answers to some of those questions, and don't try not to be too nervous, which I know is easier said than done, but try and remember that they actually want you to do a good job. They're not there to try and trip you up or make you feel stupid or look silly. They've taken time out of their day. They really want you to do well. So just remember remember that. And one of my top tips for interviews is, and obviously we're not face-to-face at the moment, but in a face-to-face interview, is always accept a glass of water when they give it to you, because you might get a bit of a dry mouth as you're talking, but what the glass of water does, it gives you something to focus on. So if they ask you a question, you can kind of reach for your glass of water, have a sip, and it just gives you a minute's kind of thinking space. So that's my top tip for interviews.
That's a good tip. Any other questions? I'm just opening this out to the attendees to see if there's any other questions anyone would like answered. So one of the questions that's coming through is, how do you know if the job is right for you?
Okay, so I think if you're really clear on what you want, so that's the first thing. So if you know what you want, you're halfway there. So are they ticking the boxes in terms of where it is, the salary, what you'll be doing? And hopefully you will get a feel for that before you even go for the interview. But gut feeling as well. So think about, in terms of cultural fit, so how the business feels for you. So, you know, really go in and listen to your gut instinct. So if you love working in an open plan office and you go there and actually you're going to be shut on your own in a little cupboard, then maybe that's not the right place for you. A great question to ask actually at interview is to ask the interviewer what they love about working there. And then really listen to the responses and watch the body language. So if they suddenly close up, if they look a little bit shifty when they're answering, maybe they're not being quite truthful about what they're talking about. But if they're using words that resonate with you, it's really friendly, we have dress down Fridays, you know, we have a great social side to the business, and that's the kind of thing that you love, then that's telling you something as well. So listen to your gut instinct, ask questions that you want to know the answer to help you decide whether or not it's the right place for you, and make sure they're ticking the boxes in terms of your priorities and the kind of basics that you want and need.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Amanda, for coming.
You're really welcome.
We really appreciated your time and for answering all of those questions and giving us such an insightful and positive outlook on the job market, because we thought it was all bleak out there, but we now know that there are job opportunities out there. They may be temporary at the moment, but they perhaps may flourish into permanent job opportunities. Job opportunities with probably within the government as well, within the health and safety executive. And
yeah, I mean, and as well, don't forget, I think in terms of that temporary question, employers might be a little nervous about taking someone on permanently at the moment. So temporary is quite good for them while they determine whether or not their business is going to expand in the future. So, you know, I think that don't discount a temporary job if it looks like the right thing for you.
And it can work both ways, because it gives you an opportunity as well to have a little look and feel what that job is, particularly if you're working in something that you're doing a role that you haven't done before as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And then, so thank you very much. That's been very helpful. And thank you very much for all the attendees today. And please do go to our website and join up for other events. And this particular webinar will be posted up on our website, so you can view it if you weren't able to attend today for whatever reason, or your friends or family member couldn't attend. Please do feel free to direct them to that later on. Thank you very much again.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you to everyone who's been here listening. Thank you for your comments that it was helpful. That's great. I'm so pleased. And I wish you all of the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.